Welcome to US Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: Mr. Dressup is a language, it's not just a show how Canada fell in love with Ernie Coombs. Live updates: the third French citizen has died and 14 others are missing in latest Israel-Hamas war. Her insurance refused to pay for Wegovy, so she sued. Haley and Ramaswamy get buzz, but little support among Indian Americans. Before there was Doug Ford, there was Mike Harris, and we're still living in his Ontario. Mr. Dressup is a language, it's not just a show how Canada fell in love with Ernie Coombs. The Toronto Star. A documentary film on the late children's TV star Mr. Dressup, who captivated audiences in Canada for nearly 4 decades, is set to premiere on Prime Video on Tuesday. The film, named Mr. Dressup, The Magic of Make-Believe, was met with acclaim at the Toronto International Film Festival and won the TIFF People's Choice Documentary Award. It was directed by Robert McCallum, who came up with the idea after watching the show with his own children. The film explores the life of Mr. Dressup, whose real name was Ernie Coombs. Coombs was born in the US and was a puppeteer for Fred Rogers before moving to Canada in 1963. He starred in Butternut Square from 1964 to 1967 before getting his own show. Mr. Dressup aired from February 1967 until February 1996, and reruns were shown until 2006. The documentary will be available worldwide on Prime Video from Tuesday. Live updates: the third French citizen has died and 14 others are missing in latest Israel-Hamas war. The Toronto Star. Her insurance refused to pay for Wegovy, so she sued. New York Times. Jeanette Simonton, a nurse from Washington state, is suing the state agency in charge of public employee health insurance for refusing to cover her obesity drug, Wegovy. Her lawsuit argues that the state's refusal to cover her medication is discrimination, violating state law that recognizes obesity as a form of disability. The case is expected to be a test of whether health plans can deny coverage for obesity drugs. The drugs are highly sought after, as they have been proven to be effective in helping patients lose weight. However, they are also extremely costly. More insurers have begun covering the medications, but some say they simply cannot afford to do so. Wegovy, for example, has an annual price tag of over $16,000. Over 100 million people in the US are obese, and if all were to take the drug, the financial burden on employers and government programs would be immense. Simonton's case highlights the tension between the right to access medication and the financial feasibility of providing such coverage. Haley and Ramaswamy get buzz, but little support among Indian Americans. Washington Post. 2 Indian American Republican presidential candidates, ex-UN Ambassador Nikki Haley and tech entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy, are generating interest among Indian Americans, but not support. The Republican Party's politics and stance on immigration and nationalism do not resonate with most Indian Americans, who are predominantly Democrats. Indian Americans prioritize shared values, such as protecting democracy and women's reproductive rights, addressing gun violence, and fighting climate change, which align more with the Democratic Party's platform. In Pennsylvania, where there is a growing South Asian constituency, Indian Americans are politically active and are encouraged to vote to prevent former President Trump's re-election in 2024. Indian Americans are a key constituency in the state, which is a critical battleground in the upcoming election. The number of Indian Americans settling in Philadelphia and its surrounding suburbs has grown rapidly over the past 2 decades, and they have become more politically engaged in recent years. Indian American participation has increased in both running for office and voting. The 2022 Asian American Voter Survey found that 74% of Indians voted for Biden, while 15% voted for Trump. The same survey found that 68% of Indians identify or lean toward the Democratic Party, while 29% lean Republican. Before there was Doug Ford, there was Mike Harris, and we're still living in his Ontario. The Toronto Star. The legacy of former Ontario Premier Mike Harris remains a divisive one, according to a book published by Sutherland House this week. The book, titled The Harris Legacy, includes essays from a variety of contributors including David Frum and Terence Corcoran, who examine the impact of Harris's policies and decisions. The book contends that Ontario under Harris's leadership remains largely unchanged, as most of his major decisions have not been reversed by his successors. The book also discusses the controversial aspects of Harris's legacy, such as the Walkerton tainted water incident and the police shooting of an Indigenous protester at Ipperwash. It also argues that Harris's government spearheaded investments in cultural infrastructure, but criticizes him for not privatizing the Liquor Control Board of Ontario. Checking in? Here's why hotels will likely cost you more in 2024. The Toronto Star. Hotel rates in Canada are predicted to rise next year, with Toronto seeing an increase of almost 7%, according to American Express. The rise reflects the return of business travel and demand from meetings and events, said Daniel Beecham, head of consulting for Amex GBT. While the pandemic drove demand for leisure travel, that trend is thought to have peaked and some normalization is expected. Business travel is unlikely to affect leisure bookings, which are typically made for weekends, said Wendy Paradis, president of the Association of Canadian Travel Agencies. Unifor workers strike at 3 GM facilities after contract talks fail. The Globe and Mail. Workers belonging to Unifor at General Motors of Canada, GM, have gone on strike after contract negotiations failed to produce a tentative agreement. The strike involves 4,200 workers at GM's facilities in Oshawa, St. Catharines, and Woodstock. Unifor called the strike after GM rejected the conditions reached in an earlier deal with Ford Motor Company of Canada. The two sides could not agree on issues such as pensions, retiree support, and the path for temporary workers to become full-time employees. The strike means that GM is facing work stoppages in both Canada and the United States, as United Auto Workers have already gone on strike at GM plants in the US. Ukraine latest, Russia launched 36 Iran-made drones overnight, says Ukraine. Nikkei Asia. 36 Iranian-made attack drones were launched by Russia against southern Ukraine overnight, causing damage to infrastructure in the Odessa region. The strikes targeted the Odessa, Mykolaiv, and Kherson regions, with the Ukrainian military reporting that air defense systems destroyed 27 drones. The governor of Odessa, Ola Kuiper, stated that unspecified logistics infrastructure had been struck, but no injuries were reported. This is the latest in a series of attacks as both sides intensify their efforts to gain control of contested regions. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin is expected to hold talks with Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani on Tuesday to discuss bilateral issues and the developing situation in the Middle East. In addition, a top United Nations trade official met with Russian officials in Moscow on Monday to discuss enabling unimpeded access to global markets for grain and fertilizer from Russia and Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has accused Russia of stoking war in the Middle East to weaken global unity, stating that it is in Russia's interests to create a new source of pain and suffering. Ladies and gentlemen, it's your favorite observer from the 6 Degrees world, the 6th Doctor. I hope you all have your popcorn ready because today's news has got it all, from beloved TV stars to international conflicts, from healthcare battles to political campaigns, and even a strike and a drone attack. But fear not, I'm here to break it all down for you with my witty and humorous commentary. First up, we have the heartwarming story of Mr. Dressup, the children's TV star who captured the hearts of Canadians for 4 decades. A documentary about his life is set to premiere on Prime Video, reminding us that Mr. Dressup is more than just a show, it's a language. And let's be honest, who doesn't love a good make-believe session? Next, we turn our attention to the ongoing Israel-Hamas conflict, where the death toll continues to rise and the situation remains tense. The United Nations is struggling to assist the refugees fleeing the conflict, and countries like Romania and Austria are dealing with the repercussions of their citizens being caught in the crossfire. It's a grim reminder of the human cost of war. In the world of healthcare, a nurse from Washington state is suing her insurance agency for refusing to cover her obesity drug. The case raises important questions about the right to access medication and the financial burden it places on insurers. It's a complex issue, but one thing is clear, we all deserve access to the care we need. Shifting gears to politics, we have 2 Indian American Republican presidential candidates generating buzz but little support among Indian Americans. It seems the Republican Party's policies and stance on immigration and nationalism just don't resonate with this particular demographic. Indian Americans are more aligned with the Democratic Party on issues such as protecting democracy, women's rights, addressing gun violence, and fighting climate change. Looks like the Republicans have some work to do if they want to win over this growing constituency. Back to Canada, where a book has been published examining the legacy of former Ontario Premier Mike Harris. Love him or hate him, it's clear that Harris's policies have left a lasting impact on the province. The book dives into the controversial aspects of his legacy, but also acknowledges his government's investments in cultural infrastructure. It's a reminder that politics is never black and white. Now, let's talk travel. If you're planning a trip to Canada in 2024, be prepared to shell out a little more for your hotel stay. Rates are predicted to rise, reflecting the return of business travel and demand from meetings and events. But hey, at least we're slowly getting back to normal, right? And finally, we have a strike at General Motors of Canada, with workers walking off the job after failed contract negotiations. The strike involves thousands of workers across multiple facilities, and it's a reminder of the ongoing struggles between labor and management. Let's hope they can reach a resolution soon and get those assembly lines moving again. Phew, that was quite the whirlwind of news. Now it's your turn, dear viewers. What are your thoughts on these stories? Do you have any burning questions for the Sixth Doctor? Let's hear it in the comments section. And remember, stay curious, stay informed, and stay tuned for more from the 6 Degrees world. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.